Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our virtual event on developing an OpenShift enablement strategy. My name is Ross Beard. I support the marketing function here at Shadowsoft, and we're really excited to have an engaging, interactive discussion today around enablement, and specifically focused on Red Hat OpenShift. I want to thank our sponsors and our partners today. Red Hat, thanks Mike, appreciate your help with this one, and Intel. Together we'll be really talking through a few of the key ideas around enablement and then opening up a bit of a discussion later. Housekeeping, we'll do the presentation for the first 30 minutes, and then we want to break up into a group discussion where we will really be asking you some questions and wanting to keep it as interactive as possible. Introductions. Derrick Sutherlar will be leading our presentation today. He is a practice manager at Shadowsoft, been with the company for 5-6 years now. We'll get into a bit more of a deeper introduction with him later. Tim Eck, also a practice manager at Shadowsoft, been at the company for around a year now. John Dingler, practice manager, and Jimmy Hendricks, our Red Hat solution specialist. So quickly about Shadowsoft. We are Red Hat's largest partner here in the Southeast. We've been in business for 13 years and started as an open source company, really riding that wave, helping customers get enabled around Red Hat Enterprise Linux, then moving into application servers, automation, and now in the last 5 years, specifically focusing on Kubernetes and Red Hat OpenShift. So we have a number of OpenShift implementations under our belt. We've got a number of experiences that we can draw on today, and one of the things that we've found and our customers have told us is enablement is the key to success. So that's why I'm specifically really excited about today's session, because we really want to help you understand what you need to do to enable your team to ensure successful adoption and implementation. As a company, we need enablement. So in the last 6-12 months, we've gone out, we've talked to our customers, and what they've told us is they need help enabling their teams and their key employees to use and manage these technologies. They don't want OpenShift sitting on the shelf. They've also told us that they need help adopting new practices and processes. So as companies are moving to containers, this is transforming the way that they deliver software and the way that they deliver applications. So that means there's some new processes, there's some new practices that they need to learn and roll out. And lastly, customers have told us they need to enable their teams to build modern applications. So microservice architecture, cloud-native applications, this is the way forward, and customers are asking for help, and they want to enable their teams to be able to do that. And that's really the reason why we put this session on today. And next I want to introduce Derrick Sutherlar, who will be leading this discussion. He has a particular passion around teaching and enabling teams and enabling organizations. His role at Shadowsoft is he leads consulting engagements, providing technical guidance, assistance, and solution architecture. He brings 12 years experience, specifically focused in software engineering, security, performance optimization, automation, cloud computing, and information assurance. So on that note, Derrick, I'm going to pass the mic over to you, and we're really excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, me too. I did not prepare. No, I'm just kidding. So thank you everyone for who's joined us today. Thanks Ross for the introductions. To Ross's point, I've been here for about 6 years, a little over 6 years now. I've used OpenShift since it wasn't even built on Kubernetes, back when it was built on cartridges and gears. Even prior to Red Hat's adoption of the tool set when they took it on as their new platform as a service solution. And I've been with them through the entire transition as the tool has changed and become a Kubernetes native solution and all the different tooling that's gone around it. And I've watched it evolve and really become the pinnacle of what you can do from a container management system. So my experience is kind of deep in here. And the interesting thing is I've seen companies do really well with using this, and I've seen other companies let it become shelfware because they did the wrong things internally and they weren't thinking about long-term success and what they were trying to do. And this is a tool that requires a lot more touch in a good way because it invokes change in an organization that's going to be for the positive. So as a reminder for those that are in the room, or virtually at least, OpenShift and Kubernetes, they're built on the same premise, but they're different things. OpenShift is a Kubernetes solution, but Kubernetes by itself leaves a lot to be desired. There's a lack of service meshing, CI/CD, dynamic storage, developer tooling, like how you integrate with your IDE and be able to actually push changes rapidly when you're in actual source code development. How you do monitoring and log transactioning, tracing of applications, all of these different things that you would really require to make Kubernetes a robust solution don't come obviously out of the box. Though that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can kind of mix and match your own pie of the slice. The problem is that becomes expensive to go look at all these different tooling, not only from a time investment, but from a financial support perspective to go get all those tools. Where OpenShift is not just Kubernetes, it's really a framework. It's a platform as a service. And so OpenShift lends itself to changing an organization to becoming something different than it maybe initially was trying to try and be more performant or future facing. So at this point in your adoption phase, you probably have considered OpenShift. You might be at the point of saying, this is something I'm really considering. You might have even bought it already and are looking to change how your organization uses this product to make it actually be useful. Everyone's at a different stage in their journey with this platform. Again, whether it be there in the initial kind of evaluation phase or even at the point that they've already bought it. And so I'm going to pose some questions to you that I don't want you to answer for right now, but I want you to think about in the back of your mind as I go throughout this, and we'll address them when we get to the roundtable. For you, what's been holding you back from moving forward? What kind of questions do you think you would have in your mind around what's the variable differences in how you would adopt just Kubernetes versus OpenShift, and who or what is holding you back, and how could we help you adjust those conversations? So keep that in the back of your mind. Think about those types of questions as we move throughout, because that's really the premise of this. Ross alluded to the fact that enablement is really, it's an essential part of making sure that OpenShift is adopted. And by enablement, what we're talking about, it's not only the training aspect, it's not only the organizational usage of the product and how you make a difference with how you leverage application workflows. It's enablement as it is focused around how your organization needs to change. Adopting a path like OpenShift is quite different than adopting just Kubernetes. Kubernetes is just an engine, right? You can put anything on top of Kubernetes and get it deployed, but making it usable, making it functional, increasing the way you release software into the market, reducing your time to market, improving site reliability, to make these things reality takes a lot more effort than just grabbing a tool off the shelf and just throwing some stuff onto it. It's going to take organizational shifts. And this is where we really see enablement in organization comes down to really three kinds of phases. First, you have to build leadership support. And what I'm talking about is getting leadership to buy in on what's going to have to change in order for this tool to be viable. And you do that by not saying, hey, I want to use OpenShift. You do that by starting with the reason as to why you're doing it. The second thing would be aligning your team, getting the individual team members on board with what you're doing. And then the last thing would be talking about training and what that actually looks like inside of your organization from a technical difference. So building leadership support, going back to that for a second, what does that look like? I love the book from Simon Sinek, Start With Why, because I think it hones in on what most people forget to do. And it's, if we're going to talk about a tool, like Kubernetes versus what I would call a framework like OpenShift. Adopting it is more than just, hey, as engineers, we think this is a great solution for our organization. Adopting it is much bigger than that. It's, how is this going to impact the way that our engineers do business every day? If you're truly adopting a platform like OpenShift, you have to be thinking about the fact that it's a PaaS. How does that change the way your guys in your software development team do business? How do they interoperate? How does your operations team focus and function on a daily basis on the type of tasks they're going to be using? And leaders are only going to want to make change there if they understand the why, if they understand what is the benefit of me doing this, what's the true value proposition, so to speak, of me getting in on the, on the adoption of OpenShift and making changes to our organization, because it seems like a lot for a product. And the value proposition, the real why, starts to become with how your organization changes once you become more software driven, once you become more microservice architected. Most organizations, before they buy into any Kubernetes solution, but especially OpenShift, they're traditionally more of a monolithic type shop. They might be at the realm of a SOA, which is what we hope for them to at least be, but they're not considering that when they go to this new environment, how that's going to change the way their developers and engineers do business. And ultimately, if you become more of a software-driven organization, why that's going to improve or how that's going to improve the way that you bring applications to market and the speed at which you can operate, it's going to change the way you do business. And in a lot of ways, it's going to change the way that even incident response happens. And leadership's going to need to be aware of this to be bought in. And I don't want to talk about the specifics exactly right now, because every specific to this is going to differ depending on your organization and your organization's needs. So this goes back to those questions that we were talking about earlier. I want you to keep in the back of your mind this leadership support. What are the things that could be potentially holding you back from a wide perspective that you need to be addressing? And let's talk about that in the carry-on session after this. So with that being said, the second real big thing, once you identify your why for your organization from a speed to market perspective, a cost perspective, and you've talked to your leadership about that, the second thing you're going to have that's kind of a hurdle is, even if you get leadership bought in, I'm sure we've all run into this before in our organizations. You might be having different types of team members in your organizations. Some people that are career driven, that don't really care about your company, but care about what their career looks like over the next, 5 to 6 to 7 years and how that's going to change them. And other people are organization driven. They've been here for 10 years. They're not going anywhere. And these people have different motivations and different needs that need to be addressed to get them to buy into why we want to start using this as an organization. Now, to be fair, sometimes management can just go, hey, this is what we're using now. Everyone start adopting it. And that's great. When in those moments when you have that kind of buy-in from your team, that kind of respect from your individuals, adoption is easy. But a lot of times it's not that simple. To give an example, for those who are familiar with database administrators, when it comes to databases, when they're Oracle guys, they never want to move, right? Oracle's their baby. They've been using it for 20 years. This is the tool they know. This is the practice they know. Why would they want to adopt something different? Now, obviously, I'm not talking about databases with OpenShift, but my point is still the same, that every individual, you're going to want bought into the methodology of why it is you're adopting this, to make sure that it's a success, to make sure that you're doing things properly. So for the career-driven guy, it's really about how do we pitch this in such a way to our guys to let them know this is going to set you up for success in the future. The companies of the future are going to be software aligned and software driven, and you're going to ultimately be a part of something that's going to enable you for future career paths to either be a site reliability engineer or to better architect software-based solutions such that they can scale out more easily. It's only going to improve what you're doing. It's not going to be a negative impact on you. And for the guys that are more organization driven, that maybe are slower to move, they like the norm of things now. This is about the comfort of telling them, look, probably right now you're used to things being thrown over the wall. Guys that are developing code that go, yeah, this works in localhost, and when I throw it over the wall, hopefully it works in production, but you go figure it out. they're going to hear that and they're going to remember those environments where that's happened. And I'm sure it happens in every organization. Almost every organization I've ever talked to has had some level of that going on. If you're normally used to that, infrastructure guys will automatically recognize the fact when you start talking about this, that their life is going to change kind of. They're not going to be responsible for the deployment of the application. That's almost going to fall on the developer now and how he builds out his containers. What becomes easier for an infrastructure admin's job is your job now becomes about maintaining the platform, making sure policy is driven correctly, making sure that the Kubernetes instance is updated and kept alive at all times. But when it comes to the actual applications and their life, they're going to be less responsible for that because they're not the ones that are actually deploying it anymore, because you're becoming a software as a service or software driven system, an organization, once you adopt a platform as a service like OpenShift. So again, thinking back of that, keep this in the back of your mind. What kind of teammates or issues do you think you're going to be facing when you're going through this? And let's address that as we move forward as well. The last big issue is that training thing, which everyone, of course, wants to talk about because it's the obvious thing in the room, though. How do you train people to be different? What does your teammates actually look like? Is their job and responsibilities going to somewhat change? And as I alluded to, they do change for the better in a lot of ways, especially organizationally, as you become more, again, of a software as a service model. You're going to get things to market faster. You're going to be able to respond to incidents faster. But it's also going to create new, in some ways, if you haven't already enacted this in your organization, job responsibilities like site reliability engineering. For those of you who aren't familiar with site reliability engineering, it was a term that was originally created by Google internally for what they were trying to do. But it's becoming much more concrete and used in other organizations for engineers that are really responsible for architecting systems that minimize system downtime. And that goes all the way from the way you build out your application structures, the way that you build out the infrastructure that maintains your application, the tooling you select for incident response. These guys are somewhat involved in incident response. And again, they're involved in architecture development. So and part of this is about new job creation organization, creating these new roles and providing the right training by which they're going to go, oh yeah, you know, we've built our application to be SOA-based, but we haven't implemented caching mechanisms previously. We haven't made our application stateless in design. The way our database is developed, it's not from a high reliability perspective or with an abstraction tool like a Datavert in place so we can make migrations. It's about becoming aware of new things that you have to start using, like service meshing. When you're in an environment like a platform as a service and you start delivering software in this kind of fashion, you're going to start to go down the rabbit hole of almost becoming, from a release cycle perspective, at least, mind you, more like the Netflixes of the world, the Facebooks of the world, the Twitters of the world, who have multiple releases monthly in a lot of ways. And with that, at least if it makes sense for your organization, you're going to be dealing with canary type deployments and the way that you swap out different types of things. And this is where service meshing really becomes into play. So there's a huge focus on the way that we did business previously versus the way we're going to design training moving forward now. How do we look at the way our applications are architected to get them into the new system? For operations, it's a training pipeline around how you're going to be managing the health of the cluster and how you're going to automate updates and fixes, right? A lot of it's been postulated for you with the way that OpenShift has been developed. And that's kind of the benefit of a platform as a service in general, is that a lot of the automation is handled for you, but you're still going to have to make changes for how you do, let's say, policy management for how two different applications should be able to talk to each other from a network perspective, how secrets should be managed inside of your organization from a key value pair perspective, how database connections occur. You can focus more on the optimization of your life cycle and optimization of your cluster health and things like that, and less on the minutia of how do I push updates to a server, or how do I maintain operational health of baseline systems. A lot of those things will be handled for you, and your ultimately operational roles will become more about deployment strategy, scalability issues from a clustering health perspective and whatnot. And so we really see almost training as kind of the last thing to hold you back. It's obviously important, but it's It comes after you get the organization to really face up and recognize the fact that you're going to have to change for a platform as a service like OpenShift to really start to be adopted in your organization. You can't treat it like basic Kubernetes where you go, well, we start using it, we'll throw applications on it, and we'll get to it when we get to it. Because in order for OpenShift to really show off the reason why you've started to go down this rabbit hole and start to use a tool like this, is you have to at least recognize the fact that it's been built out to integrate with your development lifecycle to make it more seamless and streamlined. It's built out to design operations and development team to take on new roles and responsibilities. And if you don't take that, ownership on from an organization, from a leadership perspective, a lot of times you'll end up with technical debt, systems that don't end up getting reused, or architecture concerns in the future. And you won't see the real benefit of why you ended up going down this rabbit hole in the first place. Sorry, my computer froze. There it goes. So really enablement is key, but enablement goes back to what I was saying across all three of these types of issues: the leadership support aspect, the team member support aspect, and the training after the fact. You can even do training throughout. Really, this isn't like really a step-by-step process in regards to what order you have to do things, but these are really the three different phases of things you're going to have to accomplish as an organization. Now, again, going back to this is really focused on, I've considered OpenShift. I think this can really be a game changer for our organization. These are the phases you're going to be looking at if this is a direction, and we hope it is a direction you decide to approach, because we really think ultimately that this changes organizations in a way that's for the better, that you can't just simply accomplish by leveraging something as minimalized as Kubernetes without the other tools that you really need after the fact. And it minimizes the technical debt of having to go research all the different components you would need to get to this if you had went that way in the first place. So I think now, Ross, I'm going to turn it back over to you for a second.